Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Purpose Up podcast. Today, I'm super excited to have with me a very special guest and fellow podcaster, Jeremy Ryan Slate. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hey, Ben, I'm stoked to be hanging out with you today, man. Add some value to your audience.
All right. Very excited to have you. So you are a podcaster. You've been featured as one of the number one podcasters. You're also an entrepreneur who's started this Get Focused consulting group to help people get on podcasts. Tell us a little bit more about what you're up to these days.
Absolutely. Well, actually, we recently rebranded, so it's called Command Your Brand Media now. We had one of our previous partners leave, and due to our agreements and everything, that's our new name. So that's kind of what I'm up to right now. That takes the most of my time. We have gotten clients booked on up to about 500 podcasts at this point in time. So I've been doing that for a while, and that takes a lot of my time besides the podcast, which I've done 350 episodes at this point, interviewed lots and lots of really cool people, and I don't know about for you, but I know for me, like podcasting has changed my life, man. Like this is an amazing medium because it just gives us access to people we wouldn't normally have access to. It really, it's just an amazing way to grow and learn. And I'm just like so stoked to be, spending my life doing this every day.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. And I totally agree. It gives you a platform to reach out to people that you wouldn't otherwise have agency to, and you get to share that with other people. So yeah, I think it's amazing. So how did you, what's the superhero origin story? How did you get to this podcast and entrepreneur place that you're at now?
Hey man, I didn't think I was going to be here at all. My undergrad degree, believe it or not, is in world religions with a specialty in Torah. I'm not even Jewish.
Okay.
I studied literature at Oxford University, New College, and then I got my master's in ancient history, which is I studied Rome and Greece and stuff like that. And then you get out and you're like, what do you use that for career-wise? You find a really cool museum, or you become a teacher, or you do something. So I got out of school and I was kind of like, well, what do you do with that? So I applied to one PhD program, didn't get in. Obviously, if I really wanted to get in, I probably would have tried harder and applied to multiple PhD programs. But I really didn't know what my dream was. My parents had always dreamed to be teachers since they were people that just graduated from high school. So they really wanted to do things big, and it never had that chance. I'm like, all right, I guess I'll do that. That makes sense. Right. So I got into teaching at a private school, which here in New Jersey, I don't know if you know, but private schools pay you like less than like, the Burger King drive-through or something like that, except you work double the hours you would in public school. And if I ever wanted to go to public school, make some decent money, I'd have to get a teaching certificate. And I didn't want to go back to school again. I just spent, 6 years in school doing that. Right. So I did that for a few years. I was miserable as anything. And, when I was 24, my mom had a massive stroke. Okay. And it was one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. I came back from the gym and I had found her on the floor, and I honestly, Ben, don't remember those 3 days of my life because I was so freaked out. And I think stress is a way of doing that to you, but it also made me look a lot at my mortality. Like, holy crap, man, I could die at some point in time. Because funny enough, at 19, I was playing football, playing cornerback, backpedaled, stepped into a drain, and tore 3 major ligaments in my knee. And it was supposed to be a pretty easy surgery, but I had an issue with the anesthesia, and I actually got last rites from the priest, crazy enough. They told my parents they didn't know if I was going to make it. I had this really weird, you hear people talk about near-death experiences, like in and out of my body, floating around the room. It's the craziest thing, man. But my life didn't change. I kept living somebody else's dream. And it wasn't until at 24 that my mom had the stroke that I was like, wow, okay, life can actually end. Needless to say, mine had almost already ended, but it didn't change me. And it was when that finally happened, I started looking for something. And my wife was introduced to a network marketing opportunity at that time. I'll be honest with you, man, I don't think I'd ever do that again, but like you could have shown me anything. Like I could have been selling rubber duckies door to door, and I would have went for it because it was better than what I was doing right now. Right. So I jumped into that full time, and it was scary. I made a little bit of money, but nothing like I needed to make in order to survive and really thrive. And I went through a bunch of things at that point, man. I sold life insurance door to door, which that's crazy. You make 50 to 100 phone calls a day, but you get really, really great at cold calling. Then I built websites and sold products on Amazon for a while. And then I became the CMO at a digital marketing company for a while. That was where I had the time to actually like create and start the podcast. And that's kind of where everything went from there. You know, the interesting thing about it though, Ben, is I look at each one of those things and I gained a skill from each one of them. So it's kind of like, would I go back and change it? No, because it made me who I am today.
Right. You wouldn't want to give up those cold calling skills.
Yeah.
But
dude, that is something I look back on all the time, is the ability to just make phone call after phone call after phone call after phone call and not deal with people yelling at you, people hanging up on you, people not picking up. Like
right.
for a lot of people, like that's the worst part, is when you keep picking up the phone and nobody's answering, you know?
Yeah, no, especially in this day and age, people see an unknown cell phone number and they're just like, nope.
I do the same thing, man. If I don't know that number, I'm not picking it up.
Nope. Like, you can leave a voicemail, I might check it. So, and just out of curiosity, when you were doing the multi-level marketing, what were you selling?
I was working with a company that wasn't Amway, but was like it. They were selling everything.
Okay.
We can replace anything in your home. And at that point in time, it gets really tough because you're like, people are trying to, like, nobody can really focus on one thing. So everybody's trying to do everything.
Right.
And people fall off and they get crazy. And you got, well, this one, you know, you got some dude with a beard selling cosmetics. It gets crazy. You know what I mean? So it's just
right.
like, it was very difficult. And I honestly feel like with something like that, if you have a company that has one product line or one product, you'd have a much better chance of survival. But when you're trying to sell everything, I don't know, it's like, we can replace everything in your home. Well, great. But what if I already like the things I use? You know what I mean?
And what are you actually good at?
Exactly. So it gets a little bit crazy because you're like, oh, you don't like this? Well, I have this and I have this and I have this. And it's, for me, it was just too much, man.
Right. And then, so when you were a CMO and you decided to start the podcast, what was the spark there? And how did you go about going from the idea to the initial execution?
Absolutely. So it's funny because the name actually comes from right when I quit my teaching job and jumped into network marketing. And I had this conversation with my dad, and he's like, you know, what are you doing, you idiot? Because my dad's this guy that, you know, he started in the, you know, he was a high school graduate, started in the machine shop at a company, worked his way all the way up to the VP of the company. So, you know, he climbed his way all the way up, and to him, that's how things worked.
Right.
So for me to, like, take everything he respected and expected and just kind of throw it away is kind of like, whoa, that's like giving him the finger. So, you know, when I had this conversation with him, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, Dad, I want to create my own life. And his response was, good luck. So that was kind of where that name came from. And it was something that I always kind of held on to. Like, I was going to find a way to, you know, create my own life in this way. And in May of 2015, I started a podcast called Rock Your Life, and it was atrocious. It was like really bad.
Okay.
We had like 20 episodes, maybe 100 downloads, and it was pathetic. So I ended up dropping that, quitting, and just kind of burying myself in, you know, creating content and stuff for this company I was working for at the time. And I got married in September of that year, and I was kind of like, all right, well, you've always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. What are you going to do for yourself? And
right.
So then I took a course and learned how to do podcasting the right way. And that's when I started Create Your Own Life. And it was interesting too, because my viewpoint shifted. When I did that first one, it was like, I was the expert. I was going to teach you. I was going to give you all this stuff. But I wasn't really the expert at anything in that point in time in my life. Like, I hadn't been through enough life experience to be that expert.
Right.
And that's kind of one of the biggest things problems I have with the coaching industry right now, is people trying to sell something they haven't done themselves.
Right.
And I think, to me, I wasn't at the right place in the right time to be able to do that. So when my viewpoint shifted, I was like, well, who do I most want to learn from? And when I made a list of the 100 people I most admired and started reaching out to them, that was the spark I needed to be able to start that podcast and start everything rolling for me. And I also took a lot of action on the back end, man. I was sending LinkedIn messages, Facebook messages, emails, because you need to get subscribers fast and furious to be able to really rank a podcast. And from being a nobody, I got 10,000 downloads in my first 30 days.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So I think, you know, I want to highlight the fact that, you know, the key to your success first was understanding, you know, being authentic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not trying to sell something that you can't really sell, like coaching, before you had that experience. And then I want to dig in more to a little bit about what that hustle looked like, because you know, for me, I still battle with that fear about, like, oh, that person wouldn't want to talk with me. I don't have the numbers for them. But what did it look like, both trying to gain an audience and gain your guests? And you know, I'm sure the cold calling had some function to play in there.
Well, for me, man, the thing is like, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Right.
Like, they're not going to jump through the email, grab me by the throat, and strangle me. Like, if the worst thing that can happen is they don't answer. So, like, what does it matter? So that's really what you have to kind of get a grip on, is, number one, like, who are the people that have a lot of information to offer but aren't doing podcasts, because that's what's going to help you gain traffic, because they're going to be more apt to share than someone that's getting on every single podcast under the sun,
right.
But is also famous. So that was kind of one thing you want to look at, is who's somebody that has a lot to offer, is well known, but isn't doing a lot of media.
Right.
And that's kind of a good place to start, because it's really going to drive in traffic and create that. So you just have to really get over that thing of, oh, I can't talk to that person, because as a podcaster, attention is what makes us grow, what makes us live. If you don't want attention, you're going to die. That's just how it is. Like
right.
as a podcast show. So you really have to be able to get over that fear and figure, how can I offer the most to my audience? How can I learn the most? And who's got great information to offer that's not doing a heck of a lot of press, because they're probably going to drive in more traffic for me.
What were a couple examples of some of those early guests that were on the wish list that kind of fulfilled that mission for you?
Elliot Holtz was really one of those, because Elliot does a ton of content, but not a lot of podcast interviews. So okay. I got him on the show in my first 55 episodes. I think he was somewhere around there. And he's actually coming back on in February, like 300 episodes later, and doing my show again. So it was people like that, people like Mark Sanborn, people like Robin Sharma, that doesn't do a lot of interviews, but is very, very well known.
Right.
So that's really one of the important things. And you're gonna do people that do the podcast tours as well. I also got Grant Cardone at the beginning of his podcast tour. When he started doing a lot of podcasts, I was kind of the first one to get him. So it's kind of that as well, being able to look at, well, when does somebody have a product launching? What kind of a trend is happening? You have to have a lot of awareness of different things to be able to kind of, I guess, get at the beginning of that wave as well.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. What are some of the top nuggets or lessons that you've learned from some of your guests along the way that you kind of apply in daily life?
Well, the thing I apply again and again and again that I've learned from Grant Cardone is to keep doing, 10 times the amount of action you need to do to make it happen. If you make 5 phone calls, I'm going to make 50, whatever it has to be to get it done. So that mindset alone has changed so much of what I've done in my life. The other thing is really the thing that all of the most successful have that I've talked to. And that's really that they're able to go from being, self-determined, thinking just about self, to being like more pan-determined, or being able to be determined for a group. And it's really, really interesting when they do that, because they think about helping other people. And because they do that, their own success grows and grows and grows and grows. And the people that are super successful, that's the biggest lesson I've learned from them, is kind of figuring out, how can I be a help flow to others? Right. And it really changes a lot of what you're doing. And the interesting part is your success grows because of that. But a lot of people, because they're so focused on survival and just making things work, they can't really get to that place.
Right.
But when you do get to that place, that's when people make, that's when Jeff Hoffman from Priceline made $1 billion. That's when a lot of this stuff happens, because they get to this place. They're like, all right, how can I help the most people humanly possible? And all of a sudden they make a ton of money themselves.
Yep. Yeah, no. And I just want to kind of reiterate how that service-oriented mentality ties in with purpose. I just had a cool guest, Zach Mercurio, and he talks about, don't ask the question, what is my purpose, but how can I use my skills and talents to help other people? And that will really kind of get you on that purpose journey in a much more successful way that's less self-involved and will actually utilize your talents more.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest thing, man. Like let's look at it this way, right? If you can help have 1 million people give you $1, you've made a lot of money. So it's kind of figuring out how you can really approach that wider group and create success on a bigger level for others, and you'll see your own success grow.
Cool. So I think it's a nice segue into your podcasting consultation business. Can you tell us how that works and some of the people that you're placing and how that works?
Absolutely. Our company is called Command Your Brand Media, and we help people to get on great podcasts. We work with a lot of them, like Entrepreneur on Fire, The Top, who else? Mixergy. We've worked with some really, really cool shows to help get people placed. And we work with some of the top people in the industry, like Grant Wise in the real estate investing and real estate industry. We formerly worked with John Jonas from onlinejobs.ph. So we've worked with a lot of really, really cool high-level influencers to really help them grow their influence, which is because I think if you look at the difference between the people like the Lewis Howes and the Gary Vaynerchuks and everybody else, they're doing podcasting. That's what they're doing. When Lewis Howes launched the School of Greatness, he went on 29 podcasts in order to do it. And right. I think that's the biggest thing, is that's the difference between the people that are really succeeding and the ones that aren't, is they're getting their message out there and sharing it to other people's audiences to grow their message. And I think that's the biggest thing, is finding the ponds that are already established, which is what podcasting is, and sharing your message with those.
Nice. And then what does scaling that up and what does the kind of future hold with what you're doing there?
Absolutely. It's funny because I've tried to systemize a lot more. Like, I'm trying to systemize how our client intake works. I'm trying to systemize. The biggest thing I'm doing right now is, have you heard of Russ Rufino, by the way?
Yeah.
Clients on Demand. Mm-hmm. We're actually taking
and actually a lot of his stuff on Facebook.
Yeah, we're actually taking and copying a lot of what he's done with his Ever webinar program, where he has the webinar that runs 3-4 times a day, right. And setting that up as our lead gen, because the guy's made like $900,000 a month in doing that. So I've really tried to find the best people at what they're doing and try and copy a lot of those things to take myself out of different processes, because as a business owner, your business is only going to grow so much with you doing each individual action. So sure, I was great at booking shows and I was great at managing clients, but things got better when I hired a client manager. Right. And it's like, now I'm trying to, handle the marketing program. The next thing we're doing is we're looking to hire more salespeople so I can get myself out of sales. And when you can really pull yourself out of a company and actually run the company instead of be in the company, is when you're really going to be able to grow that. So that's really what I'm looking at doing, is systemizing more things in the business so I don't have to do them and have my staff do everything, to make it run.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. Question for you. Can you explain a little bit more about what Russ's model is like and how you're looking to incorporate that, just to help people understand that a little bit better?
Absolutely. So Russ Rufino, if they haven't checked him out, totally recommend it. Clientsondemand.com, I think, is his website. And he's just a really cool guy. When I have people on my show, I ask them how they want to be introduced. And, in a wise ass way, Russ said to me, you can introduce me as Your Excellency. So of course I did. I said, welcome to the Create Your Own Life podcast, Your Excellency, Russ Rufino. So what Russ does is, he realized for him that webinars was the biggest thing that was going to sell to clients. So what he then did is he did a live webinar first, taped it, and then sets it up through, I think he does it through like Stealth Seminar or something like that. He has a landing page. You sign up on that landing page to get the webinar. Then on the webinar, he takes you through this whole process, kind of changes your mindset, which is interesting. You get through the webinar and you're like, well, I didn't learn anything, but my mindset has totally changed in these 4 separate things, which, if you get the psychology of it, totally makes sense, because you're taking somebody through the sales process, gets to the end, and he has them book a phone call. And on this phone, and before that, they fill out an application, everything else. And he gives them a 45-minute phone call, which is incredible for somebody that may or may not buy something. But then he actually lays out exactly what that person should do. So most likely they're going to buy from him. So it's really incredible how he's kind of worked this whole thing out, and he's figured out, just run Facebook ad traffic to an ad that's going to get him to a landing page, to a webinar, get him to a phone call, and then bring him in. So that's really what we're trying to do, because Russ has done it so successfully.
Right. And so, and your ideal audience is someone maybe like launching a book or looking to get their message out and just looking to scale that across different podcasts?
Well, our ideal client is more somebody that's a CEO and founder, though we have worked with authors, we've worked with different types of people, but usually it's the person that is the founder or has the company message that we're going to be the person we're working with.
All right, cool. When you think about how you're with your work and purpose, do you have a defined sense of purpose or purpose statement?
We help leaders get their message out. And I think that's the biggest thing, is because that's how the world changes. It changes by a message. You know what I mean? Like, you can do things, but if you can inspire others and get others to act, that's how you can really do it. So we help leaders inspire others, and it's really incredible. And I love what we get to do. Yeah,
I think that's a nice, succinct, inspiring mission statement. I like that a lot. And then do you view that as kind of like your own personal mission as well with the podcast and the company?
Which is really cool, right? Because everything that I'm wrapped up in is really helping people share a message, whether I'm interviewing them, whether I'm booking them on a show. I produced a few podcasts for a while. So really, it's helping people get their message out in anything I do, because that is how you make impact. I can make more impact by taking somebody that's successful and helping them make even more impact. So it's really cool how you can kind of look at it in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then taking it back to days when it was a little bit darker and harder before you had these successes, what do you kind of attribute being able to kind of like get out of those places where you were doing that multi-level marketing and not succeeding at it? Like, what do you attribute to getting from that place of unsureness and confusion and keeping your head down and keeping doing things.
Well, here's the thing, Ben, is like the biggest thing for me is if I had not read the 10X rule when I started doing all this stuff, I would have folded a lot easier. And it's because I read that book and continued to listen to that audiobook all the time to like get me through certain things. Grant has a way of just yelling at you, which is incredible. But it's really that you understand the amount of action needed to make things happen. When I first got into those businesses, I didn't realize, hey, you make 20 calls, you may book one appointment to sell something to somebody. I had no idea. I was a teacher. So
Right.
had I not read that book and understood the amount of action it takes to make things happen, that's what got me through the tough times. And there were times where I listened to it on repeat, man, to get through it, because sometimes you just need to have that positivity in your life to understand, okay, if you keep working at it, if you keep doing the things that are working, it's going to work.
All right. Cool. Anything else that we haven't talked about that you think is cool for the audience to know?
If they have not read the book So Good That Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport, I totally recommend that, because Cal talks about following your passion is a really bad idea. Find something you're good at and get so darn good at it that you actually really become passionate. And that's how you can do a lot with it. Because sometimes we can say, oh, I want to follow my passion. Great. Well, your passion doesn't pay. So that's
Right.
what you really have to realize is you can have passion, but that passion has to make you money. And if it doesn't, you're not going to be able to live, exist, and really have purpose, because then you're basically living somebody else's purpose.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, and thank you for dropping the knowledge. And I'm excited for all the success that you have, and see you inspiring a lot of people to have that same success.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me, man. If your audience wants to check me out, the best place to do that is either jeremyryanslate.com, or I have a checklist for them where they can get to be an awesome podcast guest over at commandyourbrand.media/checklist.
All right. And what's, besides being able to help people find where they are on the internet, what else can people do to become good internet guests, podcast guests?
Get the right equipment, have a purpose that you stick to, and really talk to the correct audience. That's the biggest thing, man. And promote, because some people don't promote enough. And if you don't promote, you die.
Yeah. So it's a lesson I need to incorporate more into what I do. But
shamelessly promote, man, because that is your lifeline, especially online. There's a lot of noise. You got to rise above it.
It's true. It's true. All right. Well, awesome stuff. Really appreciate it. And look forward to connecting with you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Purpose Up with me, Ben Stein. Please subscribe here on YouTube so you can be updated on when the latest episodes come out, as well on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you consume podcasts. And since you're still sticking around, I've got a special free gift for you. Just go to purposeup.com/free gift, or click this link here to get book recommendations from me, a guided meditation, as well as a book I wrote on how to live your life more purposefully. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it and you.